So if not Starbucks, what if I like open the show with like a health tip? Like, hey, why don't you add coconut oil and honey to your coffee instead of fattening milk and sweeteners? You think they would like that?
I think they're good. I think they're fine. I think just doing it a normal way. That's what Christian would like.
Who cares? Who cares about that?
Last
it's about
time,
me.
Last time I said who cares, I was shunned by Christian for like a week. So, do you remember
Were those
that?
the exact words? The exact words?
I don't know. Do you remember the feud? Remember the feud that we've had? I'm the cocky prick.
That was going to be my line. I wanted to call you a cocky prick. I was looking forward to it all day today.
Yeah, well, I stole your thunder.
I don't use the word prick a lot. Do you?
No, not necessarily. I'll use the word cock. You're being a cock. You're being a dong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You sounded like you were talking to me there.
Who did you want me to talk to? You're the only one that's here.
So I've been tiptoeing around the internet because of The Last Jedi, right? And for the first time, I think I've actually a little disappointed that I wasn't more disciplined. Because with the Stuckmans and the few videos that Schmoes have put out and Collider have put out, I think I've started to piece together and come to a conclusion about a specific spoiler. And again, I don't know if it's true. I haven't seen the movie yet. I'm seeing it Friday night with you as we're recording this on Thursday night, so of course I haven't seen it. But based on their content, they didn't give anything away. I'm not criticizing them. I'm not blaming them for actually giving it away. I just think I've pieced some things together. Are you getting any of that at all?
No, well, we'll talk. Let's save my reaction for that when we talk about Jedi Council this week.
Oh, we're talking about Jedi Council this week?
Yeah, because Jedi Council dropped way earlier than normal. I feel like it dropped like midday, and I watched it. It had Bobby Moynihan on it, and it was fantastic. But it was a very interesting episode.
Is he dressed as George Lucas in the episode, or is that just the screen cap from SNL?
No, he's more dressed like Peter Jackson or what's that guy from Game of Thrones? What's that guy's name? He wrote some books. What's his name?
George R.R. Martin.
Yeah, that guy. Yeah. Weiss and Benioff. Yeah, he was dressed more like that guy. He had this big, full, dark beard and this interesting hat. He was a good guess. We'll talk about it, though. We'll talk about it.
Welcome to After Schmoe and Ryan Snelling's Health Tips. I am Ryan Snelling. I'm joined by Jaye Williams. What's up, man?
What's up, man? My name's Jaye Williams. Hope you guys are doing good out there in Radio Land. What a weird intro. You know why I was caught off guard by that? Because I was going to use the cocky prick line in my intro, but I used it too early. So it's sort of standing up on stage without any bits up here. So feeling good.
Hashtag transparency. Jay and I are very transparent about what it's like to podcast. I think I'm guilty. I think you are too. We often like stew in our own thoughts like all day today.
I like how you're speaking for me on this.
We both know that we're going to record an After Schmoe. We know that we're going to come together at night, and it's a bit of a performance. Like this is a performance, at least for me. You are pretty just, well, you just are who you are, but I kind of perform a little bit. I'm the host. I'm a little bit heightened. That's why I have my coffee with coconut oil and honey in it. And all day, throughout the day, I think about things that I'm going to say, and I also accidentally say them too early, or I'll say them too late, or I'll forget to say them at all, and as I'm editing, I realize, man, I forgot to say that one line. And you, I think you're guilty of that too, right? You use the cocky little prick too early.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Well, it's definitely different for the both of us because you literally just got off work. Again, hashtag transparency behind the curtain. You're jazzed. You're feeling fantastic. I'm literally about to go to bed because I've got to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning Eastern Standard Time and basically sit at my desk and wait for Carpool to start.
Yeah.
So that's what my day is tomorrow, and also anticipating The Last Jedi.
Yeah. That's some transparency. I think you are keeping me accountable because it is 11:05 p.m. You have to be up in 6 hours, and we just started the recording. That's okay. I'm going to move it along. I know you just want to go through this. I think it's hilarious. No one in that studio, not even the fans, have picked up on the fact that I very often say, oh, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. I think this is going to be a quick show. I think it's going to be a short show. And it always ends up being the same length no matter what. And no one has ever picked up on that antic. But this one will actually be pretty short.
Yeah, you say it's funny because there have been times off air where we've finished and you've said, man, I don't know how we went as long as we did, but you know, we've been doing this thing for a while. Between the two of us, we can entertain the people. I like to think so. I mean, Christian, you know, he's told this story a couple times about how he thought that last week was one of our best shows, and I appreciate that. I mean, I'm pretty honest with myself. I thought it was a pretty standard show that you could expect every single week here from Sight and Sound. No, from After Schmoe, and yeah, I mean, yeah, we're good at podcasting, right?
He said we're good hosts, so if Christian Harloff says it, I will believe it. I'm sort of taking that to the grave because I don't know if he's ever quite worded it that way before. So that was pretty great. It's pretty special.
It was nice. He didn't have to say much. I mean, we've essentially inspired them because of the fact that they've been doing the live show, just the two of them for the last 4 weeks. That's obviously you know, a play off of Sight and Sound. So
their video sort of giving up on The Walking Dead, very reminiscent of a video you made when you gave up on The Path, Hulu's The Path. I immediately went there. Look, there's another way that they're copying off us.
That was an interesting video, the Walking Dead thing. I watched almost the entire video because I was fascinated by it. I was a little bit more ginger with ginger. I did it a little bit more gingerly. When I sort of gave up on The Path, I was very apologetic because we had a nice little fan base that was following along with that show that nobody cares about. And not Josh McCouga. He was very animated, very boisterous in how disappointed he was. This show is terrible. I mean, he dropped like an F-bomb within the first minute and a half of the video, and it was pretty fantastic.
It was one of my favorite videos that's come out in a long time. For one, McCouga was great on it. I loved hearing his voice on this. This is something that I've been speaking out personally as a non-fan of The Walking Dead now. I have been preaching this message for so many years. It's exciting to me that people are starting to join me, you know, over here while I've been standing over here by myself in the corner for the past few years. Well, not really by myself, but it just makes me feel better knowing that these people are thinking what I'm thinking. He was great on it. He was just hysterical, and it was funny too because they never fed off of it. Like usually Roka can get excitable too, but Roka was actually really. I mean, think of how Roka talks. He usually runs out of breath every time he makes a point.
Right.
He talks like he's losing air. But he was the most reserved, and I thought it was hilarious. And they were not feeding off of McCouga. McCouga just stuck out like a sore thumb, but it made the video so great. He was so charismatic, and I've really, truly missed him.
Yeah, it's sort of a fascinating exploration of this because we both sit on the side of the table of The Walking Dead hasn't necessarily been the greatest show. In fact, we don't really care for it at all. But one of the reasons why I feel like they're pulling the plug, and I think they addressed as much, is you can have those feelings all you want, but people were still coming back and watching. It was still one of the highest rated TV shows for a long time, but now we're actually seeing the drop-off from it, and I'm sure Collider is seeing the drop-off from it as well. Sort of made me question, I wonder if this has been an issue with them for a long time. I mean, we know that these are professionals. They can come on camera. They can do the show, whatever the case may be. But do they actually like it? Do they actually enjoy it? You and I have been trying to reach out to Josh McCouga to come on and talk about Mr. Robot, and apparently he just doesn't like the show anymore, which I wasn't privy to that knowledge. I didn't watch TV Talk on the regular, so maybe that's the case. Do you think do you think Christian secretly hates Star Wars, but he feels like he has to do it just to appease the fans?
No, but I do want to talk about Christian's behavior when it comes to The Last Jedi this week.
Okay.
We'll definitely talk about that when we get to Jedi Council. But no, I mean, I do remember on TV Talk, they often kind of they started turning when TV Talk was still around. Like, I don't know about Walking Dead. They were really disappointed with all of the stuff in the first season that Negan was in. I can't remember what season that was. The whole Glenn debacle with him dying and coming back. They were already starting to turn. But for them to just declare that they're no longer, maybe that was a convenient announcement, because Collider has tried to distance itself from TV recaps in general, and Walking Dead and Game of Thrones were sort of the last ones that they've been doing, with the exception of like Marvel Netflix shows. So maybe it was a convenient announcement as well, but I do truly believe that for the most part they quit caring. I think Perry said Perry was different. Perry said that she felt like she had to watch the show because she's given so much time to it. But Roka says he's already pretty much out after a few episodes. But Makuga's donezo. And conveniently, they're done with the recap show. That was it. They're not even going to finish this season.
I think it is interesting to see sort of the trajectory with television and movies and Collider and whatnot, because in my opinion, I think that TV is honestly, it has a bigger fan base as opposed to the diehard sort of movie fandom that Collider really does appeal to. But it's definitely much harder to contribute to content because it's so vast, it's so diverse, and it's so niche. I just think it's very interesting that they haven't really had, maybe, I don't know if success is the right word, but I don't know if they've necessarily had the consistency with the television shows. We know that Game of Thrones is a massive, massive thing for Collider. When it's on the air, it's huge. I think the Stranger Things probably had that as well. Obviously, it's a little bit different because it's a Netflix show, and we know all about that. I want to speculate real quick. These are types of shows, Walking Dead, up until now, probably Game of Thrones, Stranger Things, even the Marvel Netflix series. These are the types of shows that have these fan bases, like something like a Star Wars, where they're feeding off of, whatever it may be, canon and books and all this other stuff. What are some other shows, TV shows throughout history that you think could have succeeded on Collider? Like, for me, I'll just throw one out there. I think Lost would have been like the perfect show for Collider to cover.
Yeah. I think Lost is a great one. I'd be curious if they would do something like with Sons of Anarchy maybe back in the day. That was pretty big at the time. And obviously Breaking Bad. I mean, I would have loved to have watched Breaking Bad, because I watched Lost when there wasn't really, at least for me, there wasn't a Collider talking about Lost weekly. Like, I didn't have what I have now. So with Lost and Breaking Bad, some of the really bigger shows that I've watched.
And Schmoes covered Breaking Bad on their YouTube channel.
Oh, did they? I didn't know that.
Yeah, you can go back. I think if you go into maybe their playlist, there's actually a Breaking Bad. It might just be like episode reviews. I can't remember exactly what it was, but
okay.
But yeah.
That's interesting. But no, at least at the time when I was watching it, I didn't have anything to go to. So I think with just any of those big shows, I really would have loved to have had a Collider to follow along with.
Another question, real quick, sort of to spin off that one. I know Christian likes this, so we've got a whole list of questions written down. Not really. In terms of being proactive and reactive to these type of things, I'm very curious as to where Collider sits, because you never know when there's going to be a new Game of Thrones that comes on TV that people are really going. I mean, I guess it's more of a gradual thing, or even like a Stranger Things. Do you think you don't really see them take any chances on TV shows? Like, let's just say that Legion just popped off and it had this huge following. I doubt that they would have just had a meeting and said, we're really going to hitch our wagon to Legion. We think it's going to have this huge fan base. Do you think they're ever thinking about that? Like, what is the next Game of Thrones that we can cover and be the first one out of the gates?
I know that Christian has pretty much been done with the idea of a TV recap for a long time.
Right.
So I don't see that happening. I think Mr. Robot would have been an example of that a couple years ago. I think that they could have hitched onto that wagon real quick to see how much that show, especially in season 1, just exploded. I think you would have seen something like that. But I think that after Game of Thrones goes away, which is kind of funny because it's still like a year and a half away. But when Game of Thrones goes away, I think Collider is officially going to be done with the traditional episode recap of television. Again, the Netflix, the binging stuff aside, they'll probably throw that out because what do you have to lose? It's just a couple minutes. You're watching I mean, I like that approach. I'm still a champion of the TV recap. TV talk, that's a whole different topic. I get it. It's a whole different monster to tackle. But if these people are watching TV anyway, why not just sit down for 10 minutes and upload it? If you are willing to, and I do want to segue into Star Wars Sneak Attack with Makuga.
Yeah.
But if you're willing to experiment and send Makuga out on the street for a 3-minute video that currently right now has 9.8 thousand views, you can put up a 10-minute recap of Mr. Robot. That's just my personal opinion, and I've sort of been saying that for a long time. But since I have been saying that a long time, I realized that idea is stale. So to completely argue against myself a little bit, I'm looking at the commentaries, specials, and editorials playlist on their channel right now. I see Star Wars Sneak Attack, and I see the Collider scoreboard, the Last Jedi predictions, and I really, and there's a lot of other stuff too. I don't think we've covered like the Luke's journey to the Last Jedi, Han Solo's best moments. They're doing a lot of those editorials now. I don't think we've ever commented on those. If we wanted to discuss them, as far as it's like they come up with an idea for a video and they just do it. It's not about what weekly show can we do, what daily show can we do, what's the next Jedi Council. It's not about that. They just come up with an idea. Oh, well, let's do our Last Jedi predictions. Okay, but what if that was always a show? Okay, let's call it Collider Scoreboard. It's like they have a mentality of just being like a regular YouTuber in a way. As silly as that sounds, because this is a business, this is a company out of a studio with employees, but they're acting like YouTubers in a way where they have an idea for a video that they want to talk about and they just do it, and it doesn't have to be a long form podcast show, and it's really interesting, and I'm digging it because you never know what you're going to get when you wake up from Collider. How do you we're sort of having an umbrella conversation about it, but I do want to talk about the video specifically too.
Well, no, I mean, I can dive into some of these videos right now because I actually have been taking in some of the more quote-unquote editorial type of videos. I've got the Star Wars fever, as so many other people do. I'm sure they had a handful of ideas for a full slate to release this week, people being hungry to find out stuff that wasn't necessarily spoilers. And, who better to do that than somebody like, if Christian's not around, then Ken. I think Ken is so perfect to do these things, a talking head sort of thing in front of a camera. I think he's just incredible at it. I'm sure he's written all these himself. They have a lot of his wit in them, and I just really, really appreciate them. Now, this sort of falls in line with some of the new mentality. Listen, I think it's too much of a risk to sit around and start planning new full-time shows with a big crew. You're cutting out an hour of on-screen time plus all the pre-production stuff that goes into that. We've often talked about Collider needing to be smaller to a certain extent, at least on screen. And I think this is the answer to that. These are more shareable videos. These are you know what I'm saying? And not to mention too that the slate, I mean, I'm sure there's some people, I'm sure Christian would say, well, we wouldn't mind having a couple more shows, and that's perfectly fine, but we've tried that to a certain extent. We've actually been cutting back on shows and cutting back on the amount of full-length shows, and I think we're being fed enough content in that regard for them to start testing the waters in other places. And yeah, some things aren't always going to get the pop that you might want, like a Star Wars Sneak Attack, but then every now and then you might do an editorial type video or the Star Wars prediction thing that they did, which is right now I think sitting at like a 37 or almost 40,000 views. So You never know what you're going to get.
37. By the way, I wanted to make sure people know that I wasn't criticizing Star Wars Sneak Attack. Again, I loved seeing Makuga do something like this. I think I've actually brought up this. I didn't suggest that they do this, but I did suggest that they do something like this because I'm a huge fan of late night, and those videos of Kimmel or someone from Kimmel being out on the street interviewing people, there's a lot of laughs to be had with that kind of interaction, especially because we talk a lot about being in a movie bubble. So the more that you can get Makuga out on the street and asking regular people about Supreme Leader Snoke, I mean, that's pretty entertaining, at least
Right.
for me and my sensibilities. So this video was great.
Yeah.
I loved it. It was short, sweet, to the point. It was funny. I don't know if I've laughed harder at anything on Collider than I did when Makuga asked the guy the question through the restaurant window.
You like that?
When he held the microphone to that window, I cried laughing at how perfect it was. It was great. I loved it. I cannot wait to see more of that. It was so good. And Makuga is perfect for it. Perfect for it.
I also enjoy it completely, although I do have to point out what, in my opinion, is a little bit of a slight missed opportunity, and we've talked about this a little bit. The video is short enough. It's only 3 minutes, where this video could have easily been incorporated into a Jedi Council. To promote it, to have some sort of cross promotion. This looks like something that they could have done on a Schmoes Know live show sort of thing.
Yeah.
You know, in a break. Maybe they did it on, I haven't taken as much movie talk this week. Maybe they did it there. But these videos are so short. Like you said, it is sort of like a Billy on the street sort of thing that you would see on a late night thing. Why not just throw it in there to get that sort of cross promotion and get people interested and excited about it in the future? That's my only real criticism with it. And it's not towards the video and what Josh did. It's more just I would like to see that cross promotion implemented more.
I've seen a lot of that pop up from the fandom. It's that they don't know why these things aren't promoted more.
That was sort of based on our conversation last week. We were getting some comments like that.
Oh, did we talk about that last week?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about the fact that they're just kind of dropping these shows and they're not really succeeding, and yeah.
Okay, yeah, I remember. Well, I don't want to be redundant, but I thought all of my ideas for that came after we recorded. Sorry, I'm not going to be redundant, but
maybe they did. I don't know. Probably.
I do. It's completely valid though. I totally agree because, you know, sometimes they talk about how they make these videos to make them shareable. I think they want to make viral content, but at the same time, you got to look at it like they do have almost 400K. I do think Last Jedi will take them over 400,000 subscribers. In fact, they're extremely close. Yeah, they're like 500 away. So they're extremely close. There's no excuse to not have more than 10,000 views on that video. That's extremely low for a channel that has 400,000 people on it. So I don't know if you can blame how crowded and how dense the videos are on a daily basis. I don't know if I agree with that, but you got to wonder why a channel with 400K would only get 10,000. I think a drop on Movie Talk, just that alone, just a simple drop like you suggested on Movie Talk, maybe even on Schmoes Know, it would make all the difference in the world to get that video even more views.
Yeah, for sure. And now I will, if I'm throwing that criticism out there towards Collider, I will also turn it back on the fans too, because listen, I think we all want Collider to succeed and grow and this and that, but I can be as guilty as anybody for not sharing things. I mean, there's no reason why I can't copy that URL and post it on my social media feed, and the rest of us can. I think one of the things that I'm getting in the mindset of, and I'm sure we'll talk about Carpool in a little bit, and also this came up on the Schmoes Know Show, there's been this huge discussion about the movie fan community in a sort of a negative way, and I don't mean that it's just negative in general, but everybody's sort of feeling like there's a tumultuous sort of vibe going on in the community. But one thing that I will say is that I think the community needs to step up and like self-police with that sort of stuff. But to tie it back into what I was saying, I think the community should sort of support Collider back by hitting the share button more often. You know, Christian often does sort of a call to action on Schmoedowns to like and comment and this and that. But I think we don't always need Christian to do that for us. We can, if I'm talking to Kristen Smith or I don't know, anybody else that's in Schmoeville, I could just say, hey, have you shared any videos this week? No, let's do that. Tomorrow we'll just share like 3 or 4 videos on our own personal feed, and then everybody can do that. I just think I would like to see that sort of camaraderie between the fans without somebody actually having to come in and say, have you guys given a thumbs up? Have you commented? I think it'd be a nice thing to do.
I think that might be something that you and I could talk about and work out. We could sort of shepherd what I would call a street team, if you will, maybe inside the Schmoeville Facebook group. And maybe we could set aside time once a week, twice a week, or whatever to see if everyone is sharing videos. We can just link them in the comment section, and maybe we give like mini takes inside the page. That way it's sort of, again, a call to action for other people. I think that's something that you and I could talk about, even on air. But, yeah, that would be interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I just think that, maybe it's time to turn the mirror on ourselves. We get all this free content from Collider and Schmoes, and, they could use our help every now and then, I'm sure.
You mentioned Carpool. Christian today mentioned, like, Take 3. I was thinking a lot about how, like, Take 3 and all the belts and all those guys, they've really embraced the Schmoedown, and Christian has embraced them for embracing the Schmoedown, and that's one of the many reasons why the Schmoedown is great, because it's so interactive, and obviously there's a sports element to it, and it's just so perfect for that reason. As far as like Sight and Sound goes, like we did a couple of those Schmoedown reactions, but we realized that's not really what we wanted to do with Sight and Sound. But Collider Scoreboard, I don't know. I'm guilty. I watch a lot of these videos on my Xbox. So when I watch them, I don't have that comment section there. So I miss out a lot of the times on the conversation that the fans are having. Collider Scoreboard, I don't know if it's getting enough credit for how truly interactive it is. Sight and Sound, I made a video that used Collider Scoreboard in it. And I just think it's really, I really do think it's something that people can follow along with, make reaction videos to it, make their own predictions, especially if they're all going to be like this, which I believe that that's the entire premise. We'll just have to wait and see how they handle it with other movies, I guess. But I just don't think people are giving it credit. I was really pleased. I'm just really, really into that idea, and I'm looking forward to playing along with that in the future. I thought it was really, really cool.
Yeah, I didn't. It's funny. I actually didn't get a chance to watch this video. Here's the reason why I didn't watch the video yet. I might go back to it after I see the movie. And I know I'm fully aware what Christian sort of addressed was that they filmed this prior to actually going to the screening. For anybody that didn't know. And the fact of the matter is that I don't really want to take in a bunch of predictions and this and that for the film. And I think people can sort of respect that and understand that. But I did actually watch your video, because we like to keep up with what's going on in the channel. But I didn't even know that it was being done in the way that it was, that they actually sat at the desk, they had special graphics for it and this and that. Just from the little bit that I saw that you implemented into your video, I was impressed. Like I want them to keep this going. Not only do I want them to keep it going, I mean, we've talked about stuff like this before. I think you could spin it off into something else. I think you could spin it off. I'm this type of guy. I'm looking at the merchandising and the branding. Like, let's spin it off into a podcast. Let's talk about why did you think this was. Let's make fun of people who have all these things.
The thing about this video, though, is that it's not a weekly thing. It's probably just going to come up with the big blockbusters. What do you think is going to happen with Infinity War? Like, maybe it's just going to pop up with the big movies, but it's not something that they have to set aside time every single week to do. So I think it's great in that way as well, and they can plan ahead, right? Like, even if they wanted to do like a Golden Globe version of this, they could, because they have plenty of time to prepare, because they know this video might only adhere to the big events in Hollywood. So I do think that that's pretty cool and pretty special. Well, but
it's an interesting concept, though, because I mean, you look at something like the Schmoedown when it started on the Schmoes Know live show. I mean, I don't think they ever anticipated it to be as big as it is. It looks like this one was a hit. I'm sure the fact that it was just Star Wars theme is a thing. But I mean, I don't see any reason why you couldn't do a show like this every single week where you just looked at some trailers, like what was going on, and maybe you could keep score with everybody around the office and just have some fun with it. I think the Golden Globe thing is great. I think the Oscars would be great. Hell, even throw in the Emmys if you're going to do something like that. You just never know.
Right.
And how many shows do we actually have on Collider that could potentially have this sort of cross-pollination of the different genres? I mean, Movie Talk is really one of the only shows that does that, where you can talk about Star Wars, Marvel, DC, all these big property things in the same show. And I think a show like this could actually get people more involved, just like you did with the video on Sight and Sound.
Do you briefly want to talk about Carpool? I don't really have a problem skimming through this week, only because it's possible when they take time off for the holiday that we do another episode of After Schmoe, because I'm really OCD about the last digit of our show being the same as the last digit of their show. So if we do one extra one while they're off later in the break, then we can cover a whole realm of other topics that we might miss out on.
So you're telling me I need to take my mobile equipment down with me to Orlando, Florida when I go?
Oh, yeah, that's right. You're going to be in Florida. Well,
maybe
maybe
I can do it.
I don't know. Regardless, do you want to talk about Carpool, or do you just want to go into the live show?
We can touch on Carpool. I mean, it was, I think it was nice to sort of have a platform for Christian to sort of, on Monday to come on and actually talk about his experience about going to the Last Jedi premiere. I think that was really, really good. It's just a nice format for him to sort of address some things whenever he needs to address them. I mean, that's sort of what I'm taking away from it, having, it's been going on for a few weeks now. And it's just nice. It's just a nice little thing to sort of tune into, and he can talk about some things behind the scenes. We've been talking about that for a long time, that, some of these people need to be not transparent in the way like there's bad things going on behind the scenes and they need to be transparent, but just transparent with what's going on, because I think people are interested in that. It's sort of like a little mini reality show. I think we're always getting to know what's going on with Christian Harloff.
I referenced earlier in the show, I wanted to comment on Christian's behavior when it came to The Last Jedi. We didn't really talk about it, you and I, but I did think it was really interesting and kind of funny that Christian reacted the way that he reacted after The Last Jedi, because, again, there was a time, especially after the premiere, where you and I were like, why isn't he saying anything? And we know why now, but there was a time when we were just like panicking, like, what the hell is going on? We saw everyone else talking about The Last Jedi. So to hear him finally say that, like, he needed that second viewing, and basically all of that, everything that he said about The Last Jedi, his behavior around the movie, and I think people think I'm about to criticize him. I'm not. I find it very refreshing and interesting, because you and I, especially on Sight and Sound and things like that, you and I talk a lot about being disciplined Star Wars fans. Star Wars is not, if you look at the movies, it's not a great franchise. It's hit and miss completely. There are better film franchises like Harry Potter with consistent quality films. You and I talk a lot about just being a disciplined Star Wars fan. You can love Star Wars because of how rich it is, the potential, how fun you have in the theater while watching it, and maybe an emotional attachment, like, if you grew up with the original trilogy like these guys have. We get it, but we like a disciplined Star Wars fan that doesn't think these films are untouchable. And sometimes I forget, because Christian talks so much about Star Wars all the time, maybe I'm guilty of assuming he's in a bubble and that he is overly attached. So to see him, especially on the live show as well, and maybe you can tell me a little bit about how he reacted on Jedi Council too, just to kind of hear him say, look, he needed that second viewing because he didn't know how to take that first viewing, excuse me. Just to kind of see him flip-flop, just to kind of see him be more understanding and observant and objective. I just kind of thought that was really, really fascinating. Again, and it might be on me. It might be my fault that I just assume he's always in a bubble because he's the host of a show. But it was just fascinating and refreshing to be reminded that maybe that's just not the case. And he really, really did approach this the way that he would any other movie.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny because you just talking essentially spun off 3 other topics that I want to talk about, and it's fine. We don't have to rush through the live show or anything like that. But just to sort of tie in with what you're saying, and we can also bring it into some Jedi Council talk because I did get a chance to watch the entire episode this week. But I found taking in all of this Last Jedi content very fascinating because for many different reasons. I think that and I'm not going to get into the film talk. I mean, I haven't even seen the thing, but there's been all this talk about how the Star Wars fans want the franchise in general to go in a different direction, which I think is interesting on one side, but I also know it exists where a lot of diehard Star Wars fans have the concern about films not feeling like Star Wars movies. So those two things don't really go together. And also the fact, and we sort of talked about this last week, but the people that we watch on Jedi Council and the people that we know are literally obsessed with everything Star Wars related, Ken, Christian, Mark to a certain extent, anybody that appears on Jedi Council, they are so deeply entrenched in this, and they're constantly theorizing, they're constantly speculating, that I'm wondering if sometimes that if a film does certain things that just completely changes what you even know exists of the franchise, if that's sort of a hard pill to swallow as a fan. That's something that we talked in depth about on Sight and Sound, but just to sort of spin off of that, watching these reviews and discussions was so fascinating because the first 2 reviews that I watched were the Schmoes Know review and with Mark and Christian, and then I went and I watched the quote-unquote Jedi Council review with Christian and Ken, and those were so much different than watching a Chris Stuckman review and even a Mr. Sunday Movies review. Chris Stuckman, I'm sure, is a massive Star Wars fan. He's been on Jedi Council before, as has Mr. Sunday Movies. But there are levels to this game, okay? And with Collider, and well, specifically with Jedi Council, there, to me at least, it just seems like they're on another playing field. They're playing another sport when it comes to Star Wars discussion, and it's amazing, and their content is fantastic. But it's hilarious to see, like, Ken almost looked like he had been through war. I mean, he looked like he was shell-shocked. I, again, haven't seen the movie. I don't know what takes place, but it looked like he didn't know how to comprehend. They were having so much trouble sort of coming to terms with what was going on, whereas, like, Chris Stuckman did his review honestly kind of just like any other review of a movie, and I just found it very, very fascinating. The last thing I will say to sort of go into the Jedi Council talk, to watch, have you watched this week's at all?
I just got home from
that's
work.
Right. Jay. So fascinating. Okay, they did a 1-hour show where they essentially had to dance around things the entire time. And they did a fantastic job at it, but to watch it was both fascinating. So on the panel, you had Christian, you had Ash Crossan, you had Ken Knapsack, and then Bobby Moynihan from Saturday Night Live. And to just see them just discuss this film without essentially discussing most of it other than the like raw facts, like who is the best actor. You know, a lot of those conversations we had already heard. It was just, they did such a good job at doing it. But man, was it tense. Like at any second, any of these people could have slipped up and said something. And for the most part, to my knowledge, they didn't. But I mean, even Bobby Moynihan sort of addressed it. He said there's probably people watching, like every time they bring up something about the movie, they're just like tensing and grabbing themselves in their chair, like, oh, are they about to say something? And it was like that for me. Like I was kind of cringing every time they would start talking about a new topic. Like, please don't spoil anything. Please don't spoil anything. But Bobby Moynihan was a fantastic guest on this episode. Such an amazing Star Wars fan, which is great. This is something that I've talked about a lot. The fact that we need to find more people, and I'm sure they want to do this, but we need to find more people to come on as guests who have this sort of fandom that we have, I think that's fascinating. I think it's a great way to get new people to come into Collider.
Except Makuga. Like, I don't want someone like Makuga being on Jedi Council.
Wait, well, he works. He works for them. I'm saying, like, you know, I don't know. You can,
yeah, but well, you also said like an outsider perspective, so my mind just instantly went to him. But because I know, like, if they go out and get Donald Faison's a huge Star Wars fan. So, well, that was my fault. I knew what you meant.
Yeah,
my apologies.
I mean, like, if we find out, like, Gronk is a fantastic Star Wars fan, like, I would love to have him on there. Obviously, my favorite takeaway from Jedi Council was Bobby Moynihan name dropping the best name drop ever. He basically said when Solo comes out, it's going to be so weird for him because he's literally known Donald Glover since he was 15. And I was like, all right, fuck the Star Wars stuff. I want to know everything you know about Gambino because I am so on board right now. And
so is Christian. Christian was like, really? Tell me everything.
And then Makuga,
I'm really getting into his album Camp.
And then Makuga was like, can he sing? Is he a good singer? Can he sing those Lion King songs?
I don't remember where I was going with that. Oh, I was talking to Riley a little bit earlier, and he told me that their spoiler, I think it's actually dropping tonight, so it might already be out by the time this is uploaded. But he said that their spoiler review ended up being an hour and 45 minutes long.
Yeah. As it should be. The one last thing I wanted to tack onto this, I know you were trying to get into the live show, but one thing that I'm remembering now from Carpool that I think is very fascinating, I think we should definitely talk about it, is we got to see some pretty candid moments from Christian sort of discussing how sometimes he does question whether or not he's having fun doing what he's doing. Do you recall that Carpool episode?
I did not see that, but I was concerned he had a similar cryptic tweet over the weekend that I was kind of upset about because my mind wanders, you know that, and I was really, really hoping that this wasn't the case, but it sounds like from what you got out of this Carpool that it actually is.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, it was just it was a very candid moment, a very honest moment from Christian. I'm grateful that he did something like this because I think it's something that all of us go through as human beings to just work a normal job, and as non-normal as a job at Collider or Schmoes sort of seems, it is something he has to do every single day of the week. It's something that takes time away from his family. It can cause him stress, and then you magnify it by the fact that he's dealing with all these people. The entire conversation sort of ties into the whole movie fandom community discussion that's been going on quite a bit lately. And, you know, I think it's just very honest to sort of question, like, hey, am I having fun doing this? Is it too late? Could I just quit tomorrow and go? His words were, could I just quit tomorrow and go get a job at Lucasfilm? And, you know, he sort of came back around to it by just saying, you know, I do love what I do. I love all the fans and all this stuff. But it was just a very, very nice moment. And I think it's nice to see somebody being that honest and upfront.
Was it mainly due to the interaction from fans?
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of everything, you know.
Or is it like maybe just like a midlife crisis, if you will?
No, I think it was a little bit of everything. I think it had to do with the interaction of fans just in general. I think it had to do with a little bit of the Schmoedown fan interaction from time to time can frustrate him. I think, too, some of the pressures with the Last Jedi thing. I mean, just imagine. I find it humorous, but imagine a world where one of the only people that didn't care for The Last Jedi and it didn't sit well with him was Christian Harloff, the host of Jedi Council. I mean, that's a tremendous amount of stress.
I was thinking a lot about that over the weekend because, I mean, of course I asked him what he thought about the movie, and I kind of laughed, but the more and more I thought about it, it's got to be nuts that he wanted to just turn off from the world after that movie and to get, I'm sure he got berated. Just give me your take, and it's like, at one side of the coin, it's like, man, I should feel privileged. I'm very lucky that people care this much about my opinion. But on the other side of it, it's like, should I have to explain myself if I don't want to involve you right now in my life when I'm trying to enjoy this premiere, this party, whatever the hell I'm doing? I don't, like, if he wants to, he should be able to shut himself off. I don't know. I thought a lot about that. So, and again, the pressure, especially when, again, all of those people are asking him what he thought because they want to hear him say that he loved the film. So there's pressure on that alone. But what if he didn't? Or what if he was unsure? And then that could just be a whole other mess.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really, really interesting, and I get it. And the only reason why I asked if he was addressing the fans, can Christian Harloff, as the number 2 or number 3 at Collider, can he just not interact with fans? Like, is it that easy? Would that make a big enough a difference? If you had someone like Makuga, by the way, I don't want this to, we don't have to have a discussion about it, but Makuga doing social media is very important. I think a lot of people expected us to make a joke about it. I have no interest in doing that because what he was doing this week reminded me a lot of what The Ringer is doing, and if there was one thing that I think Collider could do more of, it's something like that. So I'm really, really behind what Makuga is doing. But anyway, if there was someone that was doing what he was doing with policing Schmoeville, policing the Movie Trivia Schmoedown page, policing YouTube comments, could Christian just remove himself from that aspect of his job and enjoy it that much more? That's what I would want to talk to him about.
Yeah, I mean, I think that could happen for someone if they were anybody else but Christian. I think what you're speaking to is sort of and I mean, I don't think you support necessarily what you're saying. You're just curious whether or not it could happen. But I think that's honestly sort of the antithesis of what the Schmoes was really built on. I mean, the Schmoes, Mark and Christian and everybody that they've incorporated have sort of incorporated this mindset of involvement from the fan community. And that's just, that's sort of the lay of the land. And I think we've seen that from everybody. I mean, think about how you just said yourself that you were, had interactions with Riley earlier.
Well, it depends on what I'm talking about, though. Like, he doesn't have to see everything. Like, with Schmoes Know Show, the live show, maybe. Movie reviews, maybe. But not every single little thing on Collider. He doesn't have to get involved. And maybe he doesn't. Maybe I'm just overthinking it or not thinking hard enough. Exactly. I don't know. It's late. I'm trying to rush.
Well, I think you don't need to rush. I think at the end of the day, it's just his passion showing through more than anything. And I mean, listen, it's his bed that he's made, and he has to lay in it. But he was being honest and upfront about how he felt about it. So that's it'd be different if he had all these stresses and he was keeping them bottled up. But this is obviously he's a figurehead for Star Wars discussion and punditry. And the heat meter is as molten lava red hot as it could ever be. And he just saw, I think, at one point or another, and again, I don't think it was the 100% contributing factor to that discussion that he had on Carpool, but he was seeing his responsibilities literally manifest themselves, like in front of him, I'm sure, coming out of that film.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I'm not criticizing the fact that he did this at all. I'm totally cool with it. Actually, again, going back to commenting on his behavior, I find it interesting and refreshing that we're getting this. I don't know. That's just where I'm at. Like 2 years watching Collider and Schmoes Know, I'm more accepting when I see this side of it, because this is the part, by hosting this show, this is the kind of stuff that I've been wondering all of this time. So shame on me for not actually watching that particular episode of Carpool. I was probably at work because people work.
Well, the last thing that I'll say about it is it's actually kind of funny that you brought this up, because we were having similar thoughts at the same time. I'm sure people are listening to this right now. You're either listening to this right now and you're thinking that either A, you guys must really know Christian really, really well to have all these these thoughts. You're breaking down his mindset. That's not necessarily the case. There's probably some people that are wondering, like, what the hell? Why are you having this sort of psychological deep dive on what he's thinking and going through on a day-to-day basis? Listen, one thing that I think we do very well is we pay a very, very close attention, probably closer attention to some of this stuff than we should. And it's just like, man, today, Christian, just his eyelashes, they were facing north, and the moon is not in Severus Snape right now. So
what is this?
All I'm saying is that Christian Harloff's his planets aren't aligned. So listen, we think about this stuff. That's what I'm trying to say.
For anyone that's curious about how involved we are with the schmoes over there, I would lay down $1,000 that Christian Harloff has no idea where I work and what I do for a living. So there you go. If anybody's curious.
Ditto. He's just a cocky prick.
Okay, let's get into the Schmoes Know Live show. Let's do your stream of consciousness notes. I'm looking at my notes, and I barely have anything. It's going to be one of those shows. I think we can make something out of nothing, though, if you will. By the way, that's not a criticism. And I think Ellis, well, we'll talk about it. Jaye Williams, you've got your stream of consciousness notes. Take it away.
These are your Schmoes Know. Stream of consciousness notes brought to you by SightSoundPod.com. The notion that Mark is the one posting the timestamp YouTube comments for the Schmoedown is hilarious for some reason. I've suspected people of fake YouTube accounts in the past. Mark's computer is in Christian's shot. There's a lot of laughter on this episode. I like that. The show has ended, and I forgot to take notes for the rest of the time. And those are your Schmoes Know, stream of consciousness notes brought to you by SightSoundPod.com.
They brought up, I don't remember exactly how it was worded, but they brought up knowing someone. Well, no, that was a different topic. I don't remember what it was anymore. It's late. My mind is all over the place. Anyway, when they brought up people making fake profiles and commenting, my mind went one place, and you and I didn't even text each other. I knew for a fact your mind went to the same place.
Well, yeah.
That was really enjoyable for me, but
I feel like it's a common tactic.
Well, I've never done it.
Well, I've never done it either. I think only weirdos and wackos do stuff like that. Why would you need to make a fake YouTube account to support, or a fake social media account? Yeah, I'm looking at you, Kevin Durant. Make sure you call me if you have any complaints. But yeah, only wackos do stuff like that.
Like I said, my notes are brief, but my general observations from this live show, the chemistry between Christian and Mark was unlike anything I think I have ever seen before on this show. It was through the roof. It was off the charts. They just spoke like best friends, and I don't know how I would label it any other time, because they have been doing this the past couple of weeks. If maybe they felt like, maybe the past couple of times it felt more like they had to make a show, but this time they just enjoyed the shit out of each other's company. And I haven't, maybe in bits I've seen them behave that way, but never like this. They were laughing at each other. I never see them laugh at each other, really. At least to this extent. It was just so special, and it was so obvious and different that it made me just so happy. And for a long time, I forgot about the traditional live show. I've been calling for a Mark and Christian show for a while here on this podcast. And when I saw this, you and I have talked a little bit about if we prefer this to the live show. Yes, we miss the cast of characters that we get on a weekly basis with the live show. We miss the wingers. Everything involved in the live show production is a completely different beast. So when I saw them do this last night, I thought, why don't they make this its own weekly show? They sit down, they only need Adam, and they do it for 45 minutes, and it could be on Mondays, and it could just be the Mark and Christian show. You could think of a better title. But if we just had that, even if it was just the podcast, if they wanted to contribute to SK Plus, as weird as that sounds, by just doing something by them, it would be tremendous. And I know a lot of people will be like, well, it's essentially the same show. I think last night made it very clear and very evident that it's just not the same show. It's not. If they do that, it is not at all the same as what the Schmoes Know live show typically ends up being. So this is sort of my call to action, if you will. I would love for Christian and Mark to seriously think about doing something like this. It was just really, really special to me, and I don't know if they see it. It was probably just the same as last week and the week before, but I saw something here, and I'm oddly passionate about it right here, right now. What did you think?
I mean, I sort of echo all of your sentiments, to be completely honest, but I think, if that wasn't going to be the case, that they weren't going to spin off and do a separate type of show, there's no reason why they couldn't. I mean, to my knowledge, I can't be 100% on this, but it seems like, at least in the past, that they've sort of done this on their lunch break, and they sort of just gotten it out of the way while the studio was free in the middle of their day. I think you could do it as a separate show, and I think that would be fine. But I think, too, just sort of go back to a conversation that we've already had, where there's no reason why they couldn't do this for 3 weeks out of the month and do a live show, full cast of characters, or vice versa, or whatever the case may be. Or honestly, do like we kind of do with After Party. I mean, if you're not familiar with our After Party format, we go week to week and we sort of take the temperature of the different pop culture discussion topics, and sometimes we say, you know what, there's not a lot going on, let's just do a different type of show, and that's what we do, and people like it and people enjoy it. One thing that I will say about this is I've sort of been monitoring the comments on the YouTube on YouTube about it, and people are a little bit disgruntled with it. They're a little bit disgruntled with the fact that they're not getting the live show that they're so used to on a frequent basis. And I get that. I get why you would be maybe a little bit frustrated.
I get it, and it kind of made me cringe. I know this was just your example, but it did make me cringe when you said maybe do this 3 times a month and only get one live show. I found that even hard to believe. So again, there would have to be a lot of back and forth as to how they approach this. I do think live show does take priority, but if you think about it, like maybe you don't do the Mark and Christian show all the time. Maybe it's sort of a placeholder so that we can get these types of interactions, especially if Christian knows, look, I can't give you my Wednesday nights all of the time, and Christian's sort of taking a break from the live show. Maybe that is when you make it a point to do the Mark and Christian show. It doesn't have to be a weekly thing. That you've sort of cemented the live show. Obviously, it's a weekly thing. So make the Mark and Christian show, like you said, follow the After Party format if you want to compare it to Sight and Sound. You could easily do that, and I think that would mean a lot. It would at least mean a lot to people like me that share those same sentiments.
Yeah, I mean, this is my 100% honest take about this. It's obviously speculation, and it's a theory more than anything. So I don't think there's any main reasoning to why they're doing what they're doing right now. I don't think this was necessarily like a planned out thing, like a strategy where months ago they thought that they were going to be doing this. I think this is sort of a special set of circumstances. I think it has to do with the fact that we are coming up towards the holiday season, and people, Cody got married, Makuka got married, they're going on honeymoons and this and that. I'm sure people are going to be traveling. The Star Wars stuff going on is one of the biggest times of the year for Collider, I feel like. I'm sure there's some added stress there. You got the Schmoedown Spectacular being promoted and edited and all that other stuff. I'm sure that factors into it, and the fact that they're probably moving soon. I think all of that has to do, and I don't know what's going on behind the scenes with the move, but I'm sure there's some things that you would have to factor in with that. But I think that they've sort of stumbled on to enjoying it a little bit more than they thought they would, because last night Christian said, I like doing this. We might be doing this more often. And so maybe we get it by mistake, sort of, but I don't think that this was even like a trial run of anything. I think there's definitely a perfect set of circumstances why they've been doing it this way for the last month.
Right. We have discussed, we know that these shows don't do as well, and sometimes they change what After Schmoe is all about. But last night, I think it was perfect that we were building up to The Last Jedi, because if you want to look at 2 weeks ago, that Punisher and That Punisher episode they did, it was 25,000 views. Last week when they did the Avengers vs. Han Solo, it was 33,000. This week already, 76,000. Oh, I'm sorry. No, that's not true. I'm sorry. I misread that. This was the Last Jedi premiere prep that was last week. I'm sorry. My apologies. They haven't added this week's show to their playlist, so I was reading that wrong. So anyway, last night's episode, Star Wars, we ranked the films from 1 to 10. 24,000. Okay, so there goes my my entire point. Very good.
All right.
Does Christian look like that him and his family would be get a real tree type of family?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I think there's so much East Coast mentality ingrained, and even maybe some traditionalism ingrained in Christian. Just the fact that he spent so much time in New York, spent so much time in Florida. Those are some hardcore East Coast places, and I think the East Coast has some tradition buried deep down inside. And he's not one of these new agey California people that want the fake tree or the tree that's made out of crystals or whatever they do out there. He wants a real fucking tree, and so that's what he's going to get, and he's going to call people to come and drill the holes for him if he needs it.
My Christmas tree is made out of fishing poles.
Interesting. Welcome to Kentucky.
This last bit, it's an After Schmoe thing. It's not a Schmoes Know thing. So you guys, if you want, you can check out, because I know you don't like to hear this kind of stuff. It's kind of getting to me that Christian is the only person that sort of talks about After Schmoe, because I'm having sort of like an identity crisis, and I'm getting a lot of there's a lot of attitude towards our show that I've been getting lately. And again, I know that I don't want to dwell on particular people, particular fans that don't get the show or don't like the show. That's fine. That's not what I want to do. But we've talked a little bit about like Makuga's attitude towards this show, and I might be reading too much into Ellis's attitude towards the show recently. I mean, I've never been convinced that he listens to us, which again, it's not that big of a deal. But I don't agree if these guys are going to discuss their own recap show. If they are going to discuss us with the attitude of that we talk shit, or that we don't come from a righteous place with all this stuff, if they don't give us the credit that we truly discuss the things that they are doing, if we don't get the credit for that, then that changes everyone else's attitude of our show. So I just thought it was really weird, and again, you're very good at pulling back the reins and making me sort of collect myself and think more about this kind of stuff. But like Christian and Ellis's interaction about our show just kind of rubbed me the wrong way, because Christian brought up the point that like when they do shows like this, it doesn't give us a whole lot of room to. And again, I think we might be pretty good at making something out of nothing, but we're not criticizing the shows. When they just do this type of show, that means there's less for us to talk about, and we're open about that, but it's not criticism. But when Christian brought that point up and said, well, they were concerned, they didn't know what they were going to do, I felt like his comment was sort of backhanded. And I didn't get it. I was like, why? I don't remember what it was. He was like, well, sometimes we're not going to give you all the tools. Sometimes you have to do things without us, or something like that. And I was just like, I don't know if he's joking, but maybe it's just because I'm sensitive to that attitude in general, because it's been coming up a lot lately. Now I'm rambling about it. I mean, everyone gets what I'm saying. You get what I'm saying.
Yeah, listen, I think at the end of the day, you're touching on some points that are buried a little bit deeper, but I think with Mark, he is just a little bit more generally hands off, and I do get that. I think he probably does dip into the show from time to time, and that's fine. That's definitely his prerogative to do so. Some people might not be interested in hearing a show about them and what they do on an everyday basis. However, I do think, me personally, and I guess I'm biased by it, but I feel like we provide value to the fans of Collider and Schmoes Know in a way where we are analyzing the things that are going on deep inside. Like, listen, I know I've had interactions with so many people who take in every single bit of Collider and Schmoes Know content. And if you are that type of fan and you're not tuning into our show, then I'm just curious, like, what the hell is going on? Like, honestly, because we're talking about all the things, all those hot topics, all those things that you're probably thinking of when you're listening to a Jedi Council and, oh, I can't believe he said that. We're going to talk about that. And I think the only thing that I would ask, and Christian does it for sure, the only thing that I would ask the rest of the people there to do is, one, if you are going to make a statement about what we say on the show, or you have a thought or a perspective about what we do on the show, listen to the show and form your own opinion, because I think that's the one thing that Christian definitely understands. It's like, do we poke at people sometimes for entertainment? Yeah, we do, out of love, but we also, like we always say, we back that up with, we heap praise on people too, so it's a lot easier to digest. But if you just hear what some fan said, oh, such and such is talking shit again, then yeah, it's definitely a little bit negative. But I think the entire space could do a little bit better of a job, just, I guess, again, the cross-pollination, the cross-promotion of the content, because people, I feel like people will have an even more fun time, or at least from a different perspective, of when they watch the Collider content after having hung out with us too.
Right. And don't get me wrong, I'm very grateful. I mean, I think it's obvious that the two main shows that get the plugs are us and Rundown, because we're sort of the outsiders when it comes to, people involved in this community, movie punditry, if you will. So we get the most love as far as promotional and stuff. But the comments that usually come after the mention of After Schmoe, nobody does that for Rundown. Nobody. There's never anything. There's never what Ellis did there last night towards After Schmoe. I've never heard anything like that with Rundown. Maybe 2 or 3 things about Brian Davids, but that's it. So I think that's why. And again, I'm not commenting. I'm not really so much doing like, I wish everybody would just listen to me more. It's just kind of like, help us out a little bit more. And not Christian. Maybe everybody else. That's all I'm saying. If we make fun of Beardo and then if they address us making fun of Beardo, fine, I get that. But I'm just asking something different here. That's all I'm saying. This show is gonna be short, an hour and 8 minutes into it. Man, I was all over the place, but I think we pulled it off. Is that all you want to do? Do you have anything else before we head out?
Not really. I think that's about it. Other than just sort of plugging some stuff, just to let you guys know. I don't know about all of you all, but I miss some of the schmoes that aren't there. Some of the wangers. I miss an RB3 and an ace. And if you miss an RB3 and an ace, well, guess what? We've hired them at Sight and Sound. Not really, but they have been on our podcast recently, and you can always come over and hang out with us. So many Schmoville people come and hang out with the Sight and Sound crew every single week. And yeah, that's my challenge. We're closing out the year. I'm going to challenge all of you guys listening to this. You guys are obviously movie fans, you're Schmoes fans, you're Colliders fans, you're TV fans. Come and hang out with us at Sight and Sound. We offer a different perspective. I saw somebody in the live show, well, it wasn't a live show, in the Schmoes show this week, comment and said, I hate dealing with Star Wars fans because nobody's ever actually gives an honest take. And I just said, listen to last week's Sight and Sound. So we're always going to give different perspectives.
Yeah, that's that's the only thing that I regret from this week not being a live show. I was hoping that Ace and RB3 could make everyone else jealous, because they're actually the ones hanging out and having the kind of conversations we actually want to have. We don't always really desire just a back and forth between Mark and Christian indirectly about the shows that they do. We'd much rather just have discussion and conversation and learn about each other and talk about things that we like to talk about, and not just this kind of thing. So maybe next week that'll happen.
Cobster too. We're still waiting for I'm still waiting for the stars to align, get some scheduling stuff down with Cobster too. I'm sure he's going to be coming on next year as well. I think Ace discussed wanting to come on our music show that we do. So yeah, cross-pollination.
Ace was fire. We talked for almost 2 hours about movies, and he gave me his take on Ready Player One and Alita Battle Angel, and it was a really great time. Come over to Sight and Sound YouTube channel or the podcast feed, and you can find all that good stuff there, and your music episode with RB32 as well. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at WhatUpSnell. I am laughing on the inside how funny it was last week. Christian called us great hosts. This week, well, it was different. Jay Williams, where can the people find you?
You can find me at Jay Williams, J to the A to the Y to the E on Twitter and Instagram. Like Ryan said, come over to our YouTube channel. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. We have about 100 to go, and I don't think it's going to happen. But if you're just nice, just go over there and subscribe. And then after July 1st, you can just unsubscribe if you want to. But just make us happy. That would be fantastic. I just dropped my top 10 singles of the year video there. Next week I'm going to be releasing my top 25 album of the year list. So if you're not a music person, then that's cool. You don't have to come and hang out with us. But if you kind of like some music and you're like, hey, I want to know some good music to listen to, I've got you covered. Stop by, say hey, and get lost in the madness with us. I just came up with that tagline. We'll be back next week. Right there.
Yeah, oh, sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt your tagline.
What, will you say it? Will you recite it for me?
I don't even remember what it was because I was thinking about what I was going to say.
So just try to recite what you think I said. Just try to come up with anything.
Come on back, and if you're feeling this, you can you can come back next week, and we will recap an actual Schmoes Know live show and close the year out. And we might actually talk about some Schmoedown stuff as well. We'll see you then. This was weird.